Everybody, this is Jim with Compliance Professionals. Today I'm going to be talking about material handling and slipping, tripping, and falling. Kind of putting two subjects together because it seems to be what's happening as I go around and I talk to a lot of different companies. Lifting heavy items is one of the leading causes of injury in the workplace. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, listen to this, it's kind of interesting, reported that over 36% of injuries involved missed work days, and they were the result of shoulder and back injuries. Overexertion and cumulative trauma were the biggest factors in these injuries. When employees use smart lifting practices and work in their power zone, and I'll talk about what your power zone here is in just a minute, they're less likely to suffer from back injuries, sprains, muscle pulls, wrist injuries, elbow injuries. Let me try and go down the whole body here. You know, their hips, their knees, their ankles, their feet, just about everything, right? Caused by lifting and moving heavy objects. There's a few factors that we have to take into account. Number one, the weight of the object, being in awkward postures, high frequency and long duration lifting, inadequate handholds, and a lot of times just environmental factors. How many times you've been moving around on a surface and it's been wet or slippery, things like that. So let's talk about some of the potential hazards that we might have and then some of the solutions. Number one, some loads like heavy objects. You should be using cranes, forklifts. What else do you have out there that you could use? Pallet jacks maybe, hand trucks to transport heavy items. Some things are just too heavy to be moved. And so what is that weight limit that we talk about many times? We shouldn't be lifting over, well, what they say is 50 pounds. Anything over 50 pounds can cause just a little bit of danger. You got to be very careful how you position yourself and how you're lifting things up in the air. Also, could you please avoid rolling heavy objects? If they're round, don't start rolling them. We had a guy the other day started rolling something and it kept on rolling. He couldn't stop it then. It was big, it was heavy, he's pushing it, ran into all kinds of things. Fortunately, he didn't get hurt as he was doing all of that. Use ramps or lift gates to load machinery into trucks or loading machinery and heavy objects out of trucks. Materials that must be manually lifted should be placed in your power zone. Now, what's your power zone? Well, it's approximately your mid-thigh or your waist up to about your chest, right in here. So you're reaching out and you're grabbing things like this rather than bending over and lifting them up. When you start lifting them up, you've got to make sure that you maintain neutral and straight spine alignment whenever possible. Usually bending at the knees, not at the waist, helps maintain proper spine alignment. If anything's placed on any type of shelving and it's heavy, make sure it's right in the power zone area when you put things on shelving. So when you pull it off, it's right here. You don't want it up high. I don't know if any of you ever reached up high for something and it's heavy, and so you're trying to get it off like this and all of a sudden it comes crashing down. Or a lot of times things are way too low and you have to bend over to pick it up. And the worst thing is to bend over at an angle and pick it up. That's where many of your strains come from. Bending while lifting forces the back to support the weight not only of what you're picking up, but your upper body in addition to that. Bending while lifting places strain on the back, even when lifting something as light as a screwdriver. Because when you bend over Just to pick something up, you have to lift up your whole body from your waist to the top of your head. That's not an easy thing to do sometimes, and that's when a lot of people get hurt. They just bend over to pick up a pencil or something else, and rather than bending their knees and picking it up, they're bending at the waist. That's going to hurt. Reaching moves the load away from your body. It increases the effective load and places considerable strain on your back and on your shoulders. Carrying loads on one shoulder, under an arm, in one hand creates uneven pressure on your spine. A lot of times you're better off carrying something in each hand to even things out versus one hand where you're tilted over to the side. Poor housekeeping on a site limits proper access to objects being lifted and forces awkward postures. Now, what am I talking about there? That's when, stuff is scattered all over a site. You have to walk around and around and around. Well, eventually, by the time you get there, you bend over on an awkward position and try and lift something up. You shouldn't lift things that are too heavy. If you keep the site clean, you might be able to drive a forklift in there or even get two guys go in there and lift something up that's too heavy. Some of the possible solutions: move items close to your body and use your legs when lifting. I know you've heard it a million times, guys, but it really is true. Store and place materials that need to be manually lifted and transported right in the power zone, right? That's chest down to approximately your waist, your thighs. Minimize bending and reaching by placing heavy objects on shelves, tables, racks. For example, stack heavy items on pallets and raise them up, lift them up with a crane or a forklift. Avoid twisting, especially when bending forward while lifting. Turn by moving your feet rather than twisting cargo or around, twisting your torso around for cargo that might be on the ground, things that you have to lift up in the air. And then keep the vertical distance of lifts between mid-thigh or your waist and right about up here on your chest. Don't start a lift below mid-thigh height, nor end the lift above shoulder height. Lift from below waist height. That puts stress on your legs, on your knees, and on your back. Lifting above your shoulders puts stress on your part of your upper back, your shoulders, and then your arms. When we combine all of this problem with slipping and falling, it really becomes serious. In regards to slipping and falling, more than 95 million lost work days per year is because of people slipping and falling. And when you're carrying a heavy object, it even becomes worse. So let me try and combine these two things together if I can. Please practice safety. Don't learn it through experience. There's various ways to suffer slips and falls while working and carrying things. You can slip and lose your balance. You can trip over objects that have been left in the walkway, or you can just simply fall from an elevated position above the ground because you're not paying attention, because the workplace is in disarray, because of so many other factors. You lose your balance because you're not carrying something properly. You've got to pay attention to what you're doing, please. Let's go on to tripping. Trips occur when your foot hits an object and you're moving with enough momentum to be thrown off balance. So what can you run into? Well, let's talk about good housekeeping again on the site. Trash, unused materials, any object left in an aisle or other area designed for pedestrian traffic invites falls. It could be an extension cord. It could be a tool Any kind of item can be in the way. And if you've got your hands full as you're walking, the accident can become even worse, because all of a sudden you trip over something, now you drop what it is that you're carrying, and then you fall forward. You don't get your arms out in front of you fast enough to take care of the accident that's going to happen. And falling, let's talk about falling. That's the worst thing. You fall from an elevated position, like a ladder, or you're up on scaffolding, or up on a floor, or you're on a beam, or even if you're on a step stool. That's still considered to be a fall. And they result in serious injuries and death. I have a very good friend of our family. She fell 6 inches, broke her ankle. The doctor messed things up, and now her ankle's being fused in one place because of the 6-inch fall that was horrific on her ankle, busted it up in several different places, right? When you're climbing, use a ladder of proper length that is in good condition and put it on a firm surface. Don't climb a ladder placed on machinery, crates, or boxes. Keep the ladder's base 1 foot away from the wall for every 4 feet of height, and don't overreach on the sides. Okay, I want to go over the quiz. My first thing that I got to mention is you've got to pay attention when you're on the work site, guys. That's why most people slip, trip, or fall. They're just not paying attention to what they're doing. And if you're carrying heavy loads, it makes it even worse. If you're bending over from side to side, you can hurt your back. You can hurt your arms and your hands. So, a little bit of a quiz here. And I put this quiz together so we would all learn rather than try and guess. Slips, trips, and falls are the #1 reason for industrial injuries in the United States. Well, that's really true. The best way to avoid slipping, tripping, or falling is to practice safety rather than learning through experience. If you're going to be moving stuff, if you're going to be walking through an area, just take a second to look where you're going to be going and see what's going to be in your walkway. Many times you'll find material in the walkway. What should you do? Let the guy who put it there pick it up? Ignore it? Tell someone else to pick it up? Walk around it so you don't trip? Or pick it up and throw it away? Well, the answer is the last one. Please pick things up, straighten things up. Pick it up and throw it away if it's trash. When you're lifting, try to keep the material you're lifting in the power zone between your shoulders and approximately your waist and thighs. The answers to the above 4 questions have been obvious because it's important to learn rather than become injured. Well, that's true. Okay? Please be very careful in regards to slipping, tripping, falling, and material handling. It can save your life. Be careful. Thanks, everybody. Please be safe, and I'll see you next month.